Welcome back, dear viewers. You're still watching The Breakfast Show live on Nile TV International. It's now time for our first topic of discussion for today. And as we noted earlier in our introduction, Prime Minister Dr. Mustafa Madbouli has held a meeting to follow up on the indicators of the sustainable development achieved in Egypt during the current year. And to shed more light on this topic, we're most delighted to be joined here in the studio by Dr. Maha Mahgoub, a UN agency consultant. First of all, Doctor, thank you so much for joining us on The Breakfast Show. And if you can tell us, what is the aim of sustainable development in the progress of societies?
Yes, of course. Good morning. In 2015, the United Nations set 17 Sustainable Development Goals to be achieved all over the world to secure a decent life, to reduce poverty, to have a good infrastructure, good educational and health status to all nations. Accordingly, most of world's leaders just declared that they are going to apply the Sustainable Development Goals to be achieved within 2030. And of course, Egypt is one of these countries which we are following the sustainable goals of the United Nations. And it's worth that to say that Egypt started to have economic reform, and this economic reform is aligned and matching with the sustainable development goals of the United Nations.
Well, doctors, for those our viewers who don't have the background, why do we call it sustainable development?
Because it's related to developmental areas such as infrastructure, educational, health, decent jobs, economic growth, gender equality, water resources, and so on. So it's a comprehensive system to develop the countries and the whole world as all. So it secured sustainable development for nations, for people, to develop the lifestyles, to provide more assistance to poor people, and at the end, so the comprehensive system will be developed if they apply the Sustainable Development Goals.
Dr. Maha, also, what has Egypt achieved on the ground in this regard during the past year?
Yes, of course. As I mentioned, that Egypt is a proactive country, and when we followed, and the President Sisi just restructured the country in infrastructure, educational, health, everything, all of these aspects reflects applying the sustainable goals. And the Prime Minister just a few days ago announced about the growth of sustainable goals and how did Egypt achieve a great success in applying the sustainable goals. For example, we have achieved a very early status and a good ranking, and we become 83 country out of 166 countries all over the world. Among the Arab countries, we reached 7 countries among 20 countries, and we have achieved advanced status as well in Africa. We become 4th country all over 47 countries in Africa. So in all aspects, we have achieved advanced places all over the world. That due to the economic reform, the change in all aspects regarding the development of Egypt.
Dr. Maha, what has Egypt reached in achievements from its requirements in sustainable development as part of Egypt's Vision 2030 till in the past year, 2020?
Yes. For example, if we are going to talk about health, and if you'd like to, we talk about the development, we are going to talk about education and health, as well employment, of course. Health, the presidential initiatives, 100 million health initiatives, yes, it was very successful, and this is, of course, aligned with one of the sustainable goals of the United Nations.
Yes, and it's still ongoing.
Yes, it's ongoing, and personally, I know some poor people who had free medical checkup, and they discovered a lot of diseases, and they have been cured, and it's really a very good initiatives. In education, that one of
and also, doctor, I believe when it comes to health, the full health insurance system, which has been implemented in Port Said, I believe.
Of course, and it will be applied all over Egypt.
Yes.
And this is it doesn't exist before. Just we didn't have
this
a comprehensive
health insurance
system. Now the healthcare of Egyptian people has been improved. In education, so I'm so pleased that we were proactive before the occurrence of corona crisis, because Egypt just a few years ago just was changing their educational system, and to be proactive and to transfer the educational system to be electronic. And when the corona crisis occurred, so that all the whole world are using nowadays technology,
The
tablets
digital
and the
transformation.
digital, yes, transformation. The goal number 8, which related to the economic growth and unemployment. It's worth mentioning that Egypt is one of the third strongest economy in the Middle East, and the Fitch agency just mentioned that Egypt is going to achieve the highest economic growth in 2020 to 2024, and thus we have achieved the 5.4 economic growth. And the growth rate it achieved this year is about 3.5, and prior to, if compared with the last year, it was 2%. Regarding the employment, the unemployment rate decreased to be 7.3. It was in the third quarter of this year. So it was about 9.6 in the first quarter of this year. Although the whole world are facing now the unemployment rate, yes, during the lockdowns and corona crisis and so on. So it's really great, the success and great achievement, which attracts investments. If you are going to talk about development, how to apply or to cope with the sustainable development goals, this comes by attracting investments.
Yes. Dr. Maha, how is the Egyptian government working towards achieving progress in the field of unemployment?
A lot of initiatives really occurred to improve the unemployment, or to increase, to decrease the unemployment. One of the most important factors that Egypt studied the labor market needs. Accordingly, they established new universities in new cities. It will be matching with the market needs. So people who are going to apply with the universities, so once they graduated, so they are going to have immediate employment opportunity. On the other hand, we can see that the initiatives or maybe initiatives and the empowerment of entrepreneurship, self-employed. So if someone who cannot find a formal or full-time job, so on the other hand, maybe they can find to be self-employed. Most of ministers, universities, NGOs are supporting entrepreneurships, creating more jobs by supporting entrepreneurship and SMEs in Egypt.
Yes. Also, Dr. Maha, what do you think are the goals of the sustainable development in Egypt that are being prioritized by the government or are on top of the agenda of the political leadership?
Yes, of course, as I mentioned, the most important goals is health, education, economic growth, even though gender equality. So one of the main sustainable development is gender equality nowadays.
Women are very empowered.
Yes, women are very empowered, and most of Egyptian companies and even governmental institutions are applying corporate governance. And one of the main of corporate governance is just granting more seats for women in the board of directors. Otherwise, companies will not be applying the corporate governance. So empowering us, and as well, of course, we saw in the parliament elections. So this year, about 25% or more than 25% of seats will be granted for women. So empowering women empowerment, it's really a good initiative from Egypt to empower women. And
yes. Dr. Maha, in your opinion, what do you think are the current challenges facing the government in achieving, of course,
Of course,
the Sustainable
yes.
Development Goals?
One of the main internal income or GDP we consider or rely on tourism, and of course the whole world right now are locked down, and of course Egypt, the touristic flow have been affected. Yes, so maybe we lost a lot of
Foreign
income.
currency.
Yes, Inca currency income. So I'm so pleased. On the contrary, I'd like to talk about the positives. So the terrorism has been declined. So we cannot see a lot of so we have security in Egypt. So
in comparison to other countries which are facing
yes, of
major
course.
issues when it comes to security and
we
stability.
we didn't see today some troubles happened, explosions. So we are now secured, which encourage investors to come to Egypt, which encourage to improve and develop the country as well.
Dr. Maha, we would like you also to give us your insight on Egypt's success in the route towards achieving sustainable development in different sectors.
Yes, yes. It's sustainable development. As I mentioned, it's applying all aspects of sectors. Food, they are developing food, health, education, gender equality, resources, environment, and so on. So all sectors are applying, of course, to be aligned with the strategy of the company, of the country 2030. So if we consider small or big, or either big companies or sectors, so they should follow the sustainable development. For example, applying the corporate governance, environment, keeping healthy environment, usage of water, and so on. So a lot of sectors are applying at the same time the SDGs.
Yes, Dr. Maha, speaking about the private sector, do you think that the private sector has a role to play in sustainable development?
Of course, yes. As I mentioned, that of course, waste, eliminating waste for
waste
management, to build a good infrastructure, to use the environmental resources. Use, for example, one of the sustainable goals is goal number 15, underwater, or maybe water. How to use or to get benefit from the oceans and the sea waters. And most of countries nowadays, maybe Egypt also, are trying or to use the salty water in development, in planting, and so on.
Yes. Another aspect, Doctor, is also the political leadership has paid specific attention to empowering youth and entrepreneurs. And of course, several versions of the World Youth Forum have been organized here in Egypt, bringing together youth from across Africa and the world. The importance of this step by the government. Yes,
I remember a prayer maybe 10 or 20 years ago, maybe 15 years ago. I found most of political figures are old people who can stay in their status or maybe in their position for a long time. But after 2011, so the country paid attention to youth. Accordingly, they give empowerment to youth. They, after presidential Sisi, of course, hold his presidency. He holds youth forums, youth empowerments, conducting leadership programs for youth, entrepreneurship, giving funds to youth people who are interested in establishing their own projects. So they are now they are getting 25% of the seats of the parliament and political seats. So it's comprehensive empowerment for youth, which is so good, because youth in Egypt represents more than 60%. Yes, more than 60% of the population.
Anything that you'd like to shed the light on, Doctor, or anything that you'd like to add?
Actually, I'd like to add or to mention something very important. It's not important that the country just give support to all people, but the people should change themselves, improve themselves in order to be matching as well with the country objectives and sustainable goals. So
Yes.
we have to look to ourselves and then how to develop and improve ourselves and career.
Also, I'd like to ask you about Egypt's vision, Dr. 2030.
Yes.
The president has a clear vision. To what extent have we achieved so far what the president has in mind, and what still do we have missing
Yes.
that we need to work on?
Yes, actually, we have achieved a lot in our Vision 2030, and it's worth mentioning that the Minister of Planning Ministry, Dr. Hala Said, is holding or guiding the initiative of developmental and planning and improving the current status, economic, social, and all aspects of development. And when we talked at the beginning of this program about the great success and achieving all of these are reflecting the achieving the vision of 2030. If we are talking about vision of 2030, it's breakdown into goals. So the goals, it's split it down how to achieve a certain status, and then to move forward to another status. And we mentioned, for example, about the economic growth. And although the whole world are facing crisis and they don't achieve a growth in economic, but on the contrary, Egypt achieved 5.4 economic growth during that critical time.
Yeah.
So we are matching and aligning and working on track.
Dr. Maha, 2020 is almost over and 2021 is just around the corner. Your
Yeah.
expectations for the coming year, and also the COVID-19
Yeah.
crisis, which has brought the whole world to a standstill.
Yeah.
Your expectations for the new year?
Yeah, I think COVID-19 it's related, it's not health crisis, but it's related to propaganda, media, and so on. And I'm so pleased that Egypt did not lock down in these days. On the contrary, most of other countries, they locked down. And the purpose of COVID-19 is just to destroy or to restructure the international economic status, so which affects, of course, the GDP and economic growth and so on. But I'm expecting better situations, better economic
Yes,
growth
with
in
the
2020.
vaccine,
Yes, vaccine and awareness lessons learned. So it's we have to consider COVID-19 as flu. So we can nothing will stop us.
Yeah, I hope that it will
Inshallah.
be behind, and
Yes.
the country will continue to move forward. Finally, a message that you'd like to send, Dr. Maha.
I'd like to thank you for all, and I'd like to thank all Egyptian people who are taking care about their health precautions, develop themselves, just engagement. They did not give up during the difficult year 2020. I think that Egyptian people are brilliant and the most intelligent nations all over the world. Besides, the governmental regime are supporting and controlling the status in Egypt very well, which reflect on applying the sustainable goals and achieving our strategy 2030.
Yes. Dr. Maha Mahgoub, UN counselor, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you so much for your insight.
Thank you.
Thank you. And dear viewers, now we move on to a quick break, and then we'll be back to resume the breakfast show live on Nile TV International.